What would be the top one or two things or advice that you would give anybody who is buying their first rental property or looking to self-manage a rental property that they should be aware of that you would do differently?
I would never become friendly with my tenants. It's a very bad strategy.
Can you talk to us and explain a little bit more about your business? Like, what do you guys do today? How is it structured? Who do you help out with? An overview of the business that you've built now.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Peak Profits podcast. Today's guest is Joel Kraut, a seasoned real estate investor, author, and private direct lender. Joel has purchased, renovated, and sold over 100 homes in the tri-state area and scaled a portfolio of 144 buildings, housing more than 1,000 tenants in just 3 years, all while self-managing the entire portfolio. Joel's rare experience as an owner, operator, contractor, borrower, and lender led him to co-founding Burr Loans, a private lending firm built by investors for investors. Joel, your background is insane. We were speaking just before we started recording here of the journey that you've ultimately gone through, but we really appreciate your time and thank you for joining us.
Thanks a lot for having me on. And as I'm listening to you, when you got to the part about self-managed, I could actually feel the pain inside. That experience was probably one of the hardest I've ever been through, even harder than just losing money or having some battles where you actually won finally. Self-managing all the tenants was honestly just insanity.
What was it, Joel, that you said to me literally just before we got on about pain? I think that's such a great point to start this on.
I feel like so many times when you tell the story, you can see people like, oh my God, like you can see the faces in the audience, but I try to calm everybody down. This is not a contest to see who can just take the most pain to eventually one day hopefully end up successful. We want to help go over some of the obvious mistakes in the rearview mirror so that you don't undertake that yourself and lose tens of thousands of dollars or get to the point where you never want to do this again or you feel like you're no good. You want to keep people away from those types of feelings because there's enough noise in people's heads on their own. They don't need any extra, right? So we're trying to help them calm down, see their way through, and help them build a framework and perspective so they can be successful and enjoy it, not just battle through every day.
Yeah, and what Chris led with kind of how you scaled so quickly, where is primarily your portfolio located and how did you scale so quickly in the assets under management that you have today? So
the irony of it was well before I knew anything about Instagram. I don't even know if it was up yet, but probably. Where everyone's advertising, 0% credit cards, use other people's money, have no money of your own in the deals. Well, I was a Wall Street trader and a prop trader, proprietary trader. So I was around a lot of, somewhat well-to-do people. I would explain to them that I was starting to buy rental properties and a couple of people jumped in with us and helped put up a lot of the down payment money. So we didn't really have the problem that most people have, which is lack of capital. We ran into the problem where we had access to too much and we deployed it way too fast, truthfully. So we bought in upstate New York, Broome County, Utica, Binghamton, Syracuse, from as far as Albany all the way across. And look, the properties were really inexpensive. So were the rents though, which also in retrospect taught me a bad lesson. What I was able to do really quickly was amass a pretty good sized portfolio, about 144 properties, way too many people living in each unit. And that's how you end up with 1,000. And I didn't realize the exposure I had to the third shift at Walmart. And there's a pretty well-known and pretty big supermarket chain across upstate New York. And a lot of my tenants worked in those two facilities on a third shift. And when the market, the general economy just imploded, they didn't cut back. They actually just eliminated the third shift. So you can imagine half your tenancy wakes up and they're going on unemployment. Well, the bad part was that's bad enough, but at the same time, people unsure, and anytime someone's unsure, they're protecting themselves first, right? So you're getting phone calls, you're trying to follow up on rents, like, look, I'm not going to be able to pay you. You can imagine like going through the progression over 6 weeks and hearing that 500 times. Like, it's just you're shaking your head, holding your head, just like it's insanity, but nobody was going to give up their unemployment checks for me, the landlord. They wanted to make sure they could eat, do whatever they needed to do, which, look, part of me kind of gets, but that wasn't the arrangement we agreed to and signed up for, because I wasn't able to take the roof off of your head. So, I had to keep doing what I had to do by law. And, theoretically, you're supposed to do what you're supposed to do. So that was a very traumatic 6-8 week period for me. My wife and I didn't really talk for a couple of weeks, to be honest, at the time. And that was a very difficult learning lesson. Not doing enough due diligence to understand where my tenants were coming from. No excuse. I mean, obviously, today's systems are much more sophisticated at a low cost, so there's no reason not to use them. And back then, I didn't do enough legwork really seeing what was going on and managing my own book of tenants. Not to be in a bad way with them, but to understand where they're coming from and what their setups are, so how that might affect me. I didn't do a good job of that, and I got crushed with it.
And what years were that leading up to the purchasing, and then the years that 6 to 8 week period that was kind of a downfall moment?
So I was on fire from the back end of 2003, I'd say, to about 2007, basically just buying anything that could move. I mean, we had crews to fix things. Once in a while, we bought a property that was already stabilized, but not too often. We were buying things that needed some love. We did it quick. We took the shortcuts. That's true. I'm being honest. We were not the most sophisticated landlord, and we learned a lot of hard lessons from that. We accepted cash from tenants back then, and if I was short on renovation money, that cash immediately went into renovation, which left us short in different ways. We were over leveraged from the mortgages. The mortgages back then afforded me the opportunity, between 10% down or 0% down, or even getting cash at the table as the buyer. Some of the programs with Wachovia Bank would allow for up to 123% of the purchase price in some scenarios. Yeah, but it was legal.
Yeah, no, that's insane, which is what led to 2008 shortly thereafter, right?
It definitely helped add fuel. I know what I did on a small scale, so I can only imagine people who were sophisticated then and really saw the opportunity. They must have just went hog wild, honestly. But look, money was easy to get. Properties were everywhere. There was a zillion tired landlords in upstate New York. It was very easy to connect, explain what you wanted to do, and take over their properties and buy them out quickly. So we did that. And I learned a harsh lesson of being over leveraged. So for anyone listening, 0% credit cards are great in value add only scenarios. And every business in America, or around the world for that matter, runs on money. So if you really believe everything you're going to see online and not prepare your financial tool bag to attack this as a business, at some point it's going to hurt you. So you really want to take care of that and put the proper underpinnings in place. Look, we all start somewhere. We all start without a lot. So it's easy to say that. Somebody, for you, it's not easy. We're managing multiple properties, multiple projects. We move money around all the time. We're human beings, right? We don't sit with $5 million in an account just waiting to cover something for $2,000. It's not that simple, life, right? Our furnaces still blow up like yours. My guy goes to Home Depot for 3 hours. I can't find him. He still throws a beer can on the neighbor's lawn, and I got to pay a fine for $65 when the neighbor just can't take it anymore. So we're just trying to manage that better than we used to. Now, fortunately, over time, you build relationship capital with people, which, again, you guys in your businesses have experienced. I can't stress enough to other people out there. It's not really about the real estate. It's about the relationships you build, and that will help set you free. That's going to change everything for you. You need to work on that every day. And it doesn't cost you anything other than being consistent, being honest, transparent, showing up all the time. Really simple things, honestly. They don't cost you anything extra. We're not talking about fancy software, but myself meeting you, both of you, being an open book, answering questions direct, those things all start to go into building credibility with people. And then eventually one day we all do business together, right? But just coming to somebody cold out of the blue, it's not really fair to expect the other person to react the way you want. And enough people don't really understand that. They don't put enough time and effort into that.
Yeah, it's a great point there, Joel. Most people outsource the kind of management aspect of real estate. You obviously self-managed everything, and by the sound of things, you self-managed everything, regardless of how small or how large the problems or the pain ultimately became. If you were to look in that rearview mirror now, like what would be the top one or two things or advice that you would give anybody who is buying their first rental property or looking to self-manage a rental property that they should be aware of that you would do differently this time around if you were to go into self-managing any of those properties?
Other than being a good person, I would never become friendly with my tenants in the sense of like actually being friends. It's a very bad strategy. As soon as you don't do exactly what somebody else wants, you're an evil, bad person. So there's no upside in it for you. I would be looking into professional property management. I'd be looking and making sure I'm doing proper background searches that I'm legally allowed to do. I would have all the paperwork, applications and whatnot. Use the search databases that you're allowed to use, making sure for tenants' backgrounds. I mean, we didn't do a lot of that, honestly. We did not. We did a poor job of that. So in retrospect, that would be one thing I'd be hyper focused on. Our property management office, we had a few employees. They did great. We paid them every Friday, except we didn't make much extra, right? They were sucking up a lot of those dollars. And, quite frankly, we didn't have a good enough way to track it all. Now with some of the different software programs that are out there and packages that are easy to use, from remote capture all the way through, remote scanners and whatnot. I mean, it's just a better place to be. Technology has really improved that game a lot. And you got to be taking advantage of that if you're a landlord today. I mean, you own one or two family properties and you want to self-manage it, I get it. But if you want to start to build a business that have 8, 10, 12 properties, you're going to have 20 doors, 30, 40 doors. I mean, you need software platforms and you need a professional property manager, else you're going to be out to dinner with your significant other, and that phone's not really going to stop ringing directly, and your significant other's not going to be happy. And they have a right not to be happy at that, right? I remember sitting with my wife one time on a Saturday night. It's about 10:15. We're out to dinner late, and the phone's going. She looked at me and she said, "Listen, if you pick that up, you're not coming to the bedroom tonight," right? She said, "I had enough. All week, this nonsense goes on." And she kind of laid it out there, but she was just being honest. That was her reaction. And I tell people all the time, young people in particular, young in the game, I mean, not necessarily chronological age, but how long you've been in this business. The natural inclination for all of us is to go and start where the absolute dollar cost is the lowest. But I'm telling you, I've been at this for 29, almost 30 years now. I do not know any landlords that own over 100 doors in D hardcore rental neighborhoods that are happy anywhere. They're working really hard to capture any extra dollars. They're building equity slowly. The neighborhoods don't appreciate as fast as they dreamed of. And most of them are honestly miserable. So thinking about your freedom number backwards, where, one day I want to have $6 million of net worth. The buildings in these areas right now are worth $320,000. How will that divide out over 10-year growth? How many do I really need to own? And maybe you figured out now that you really only need to own 15 good doors, not 100 bad ones, to get to where you want to be down the road. And I think if people spend more time figuring that out and not being overwhelmed by all this unbelievable stuff on the internet, they're going to do themselves a much better service and be much happier and, most importantly, more successful.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, because that, like 2003 to 2007, you had a ton of success, but it led to what we now know as that financial crisis. Now, 20 years later, there's a ton of technology advancements to make management easier, better, more efficient, optimized for more doors. But when that happened to you, you really transitioned from more of an investor to a lender. After that financial crisis, you started transitioning into private lending. So obviously, probably some of those management headaches and the amount of doors and everything you went through during that period kind of pivoted and drove that pivot for you. But can you discuss kind of what you pivoted into from a private lending standpoint after that crisis in 07, 08?
Absolutely. I learned a lot about private lending on one of my own jobs in Hunter Mountain, New York. We had a bank loan, and the bank called us to say we can't keep funding the construction draws. And that was, the proverbial oh shit moment, right? We have deposits, we have units sold, and they're kind of three quarters built, half built. One or two of them are just being started, and we can't fund. What are we going to do? We're going to get sued by everybody. One of our partners, ironically, was an ex-girlfriend. Blah blah blah. We meet a gentleman who is a private lender, and he basically lent us like the last $700,000 to complete some of the construction. I think of 4 or 5 units, might have been 5 units. So we got through that. We sold them at a loss, but we were able to pay off everybody and get out of the project. So that was my first experience of borrowing money at 12% and 2-3 points. I didn't even know that existed, to be honest, at the moment. From there, I was starting to flip houses in Newark, East Orange, Irvington, New Jersey. And I did a second house on the same block. And somebody came across the street to ask me, hey, like you're the only guy around here doing 2 houses at once. Where are you getting the money from? Because it wasn't that common a business at that time. We're talking about, early 2000s. This is not like today where there's HDTV with 50 channels of flip everything, right? Nobody was pulling up in a Lamborghini to come to the front of the house. Like, it's not like TV. So guy comes across, yo, what up? We start talking. And he asked me if I could help him get some money to work on one of his projects. So we actually lent money at 14 and 4, 14% interest and 4 points. Now think about that. I know your eyebrows just went up, but this is a time in our lives when you can go to a sheriff's sale auction and only 7 or 8 people like me showed up, not 150. The markets were much infinitely less competitive and efficient. So you could afford to pay 14 and 4. I think it's actually tougher now at 9 and 1 or 10 and 2, whatever the numbers work out to, because of the competition and the margins are so thin. Back then, you had a lot of room. No one really knew what it should be. But now, it takes 2 seconds on the internet, YouTube, university, and just Googling it, and you can be an expert in 12 minutes. That didn't exist then. I learned by losing money all the time. Every time I made a mistake, had the wrong materials, somebody ripped me off on the materials. That's how I kept learning. Right now, I send people all the time, look, you need to do a Home Depot tour. Go spend 2 hours in the kitchen and bath section, get the old pro in there to show you all the materials that go in to building a standard 10 by 12 kitchen in America, the 5 by 8 bathroom. You need to know what all those materials look like, what they are, what they're called, different variations of what they cost should be. So you're not getting hammered by a contractor or even buying all your own materials. So no one steals from you or charges you extra for them. So we're trying to help people understand that better. My experiences of having things fall apart also have helped teach me how people try to beat the system, right? So I'm a lot more aware as the lender of kind of what's going on when you see funky things. And that in our industry right now just came to light in Baltimore City, Maryland, had a large scale scandal, and people, companies not necessarily like ours, but bigger, lost, $100 million. It's real money. Right, exactly. So our industry has tightened up a little bit in due diligence. We talk about it less and do more of it. And we're paying attention a little closer. So, as the borrower, it doesn't matter for you if you're doing the right thing. But there's a lot of people that want to take shortcuts, and I don't know if circumvent's the right word, but, beat the system up a little bit to their advantage. And I'm not saying we cannot be beat. We can. Entrepreneurs are always going to outsmart whatever system's out there, right? They're going to analyze it quick, figure out where the weaknesses are, and react quickly to seize profits. That's the nature of an entrepreneur. I get it. What we're trying to do is minimize that exposure and obviously slow down a little bit while going fast to make sure things make sense. Now almost all of us are scanning bank statements to make sure the bank statements aren't falsified. We're using some easy to use, low cost software to help us do those types of things. And it's helping cut it down a little bit, but it'll never be perfect. When there's a profit incentive, people are going to do almost what's ever necessary. And you have to sort of work that way and understand that. I'm a realist. Look, I'm doing this. I'm standing here, luckily, for almost 30 years. You have to be a realist. You can't think just because you set rules that that's going to be the automatic and that's always going to work. That's a fool's theory. So working with people, building relationships, having tons of repeat borrowers. We have one gentleman who's actually closed 33 straight months every month.
Wow.
Right. He's a machine. But we jointly, his side and our side, got together, understood what he needed, provided him that, and consistency has really worked well for him. He does very simple things over and over and over. If he went to a real estate seminar and he was in front speaking, everyone would be miserably bored because he's going to describe doing the same thing 30 times in a row. And everybody wants to like watch and go to this master class and then go to this one and this boot camp. He just does the same thing over and over and over again. He's really good at it. He can fix something with a light cosmetic and get it back rented in 45 days. So he's cutting down his expenses dramatically. People need to believe in that kind of consistency in everything they do in their life, right? Not just flipping houses, but any way they approach work, the way they set their day up, the way they set their week up, the way they plan for the year, what their biggest goals are, right? Sometimes when I'm speaking, you guys do it too. You're in front of a group and you need a quick hook, right? Or else you're going to lose people. I mean, look, there's always 4 people that fall asleep, right, in the crowd. You can't let that, deter you. If I was a naked hot supermodel, those 4 people are still falling asleep. So once you get through that, you're okay. But, you're trying to get engaged with the audience quick. So there's a reason for them to listen and you be able to interact with them and get good questions. And I like to always ask people, look, you spent some money to be here. Maybe it was $90, maybe it's $20, maybe it was $999 for the weekend, whatever it was, but you committed something to be here. You spend time on a Saturday or a Thursday night or whatever it is. You could be doing anything, but you chose to do this. So why? What is your biggest financial goal in the next 12 months? And you can look in the audience. You can see people sometimes struggling to figure out what that is in 2 sentences. Like if I spent $100 to go somewhere or $1,000, and it was about general financial literacy, investment, long-term generational wealth, all the good buzzwords you hear, and you couldn't tell me what your major financial goal was for the next 12 months, like that's inconsistent to me. Mm-hmm. You should write that down immediately. And you can see people, half the audience is buying in, they're pretty on it. You can see them like look down at the paper quick and they're starting to write some things. I don't want them to overthink it, but they should be thinking about that and have a plan. Or else I can't help you get to wherever you want to get to if we don't have a plan. Like we don't have a goal, I don't know where you want to go. Mm-hmm. But if you're sitting there, you got to be thinking about that as well, because you don't want to be my age, doing the McDonald's job, right? Where you have no choice, but you got to work 10 hours a day and you never make enough money and you're always dissatisfied. Like, did you go to sleep dreaming of that? I don't think so. Right? Like nobody ever goes to bed. None of your friends have ever gone to bed, woke up. Hey, Brian, man, I woke up. I had this amazing dream. I was a C- student. I made $22,000 a year. I can never pay my bills. Man, I love it. Right? They're like, dude, I was on the South of France. I was killing it in the Monte Carlo casino. The banging Range Rover they pulled up from the valet. The chick was hot or whatever, right? Those are the dreams.
Yeah.
But how are we going to, you can get there, but you got to plan. Mm-hmm. Boring. You got to have a budget. You got to spend less than you make. You got to invest consistently. Like boring, stupid things that people don't like, but all the rich people do it. Mm. There must be a reason, right? Like they're not like hiding the playbook from us. They're showing exactly what to do. But right. Are you going to do it? And can you do it consistently?
And Joel, you've got a 7-step framework that you talk about. I think after you've just spoken about your dream of earning $22,000 and working 10 hours a day at McDonald's, I think you are slightly unique in that. But can you just kind of talk us through, like, what is that 7-step framework that you talk through? Obviously, people should reach out to you directly. So I feel like this is a perfect time for you to plug where people can also get hold of you. But it would be great to hear about that 7-step framework and how people can learn a lot more about that.
So I think one of the problems a lot of people have is perspective, right? I'm no mental health expert, but I know not every day is perfect for everybody. I figured that out. But a lot of it comes from the noise in our own heads. And are we starting from a point where we're actually being honest with ourselves? Like I hear a lot of good stuff, I really believe in myself. I'm ready to roll. Like, are you really? Like, so we want to start from that point. Like, let's figure out where you are. Are you in chaos financially? Are you kind of stabilized? Are you at the point of you can make investment? You can't be all three at the same time. So where are we? Because we need to get through those stages to help you get to where you want to be. For one woman in the greater Tampa, St. Pete area in Florida, it was just about paying off her credit card debt. She was a single mom. I was speaking. I went over the Dave Ramsey, snowball type of thing that a lot of people have heard about, but not everybody. And for her, that was a new concept. And she actually went home and applied it for 6-8 months. And she called me up about a year later. She was crying on the phone. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know who you are. And you're crying. You're a woman. It's like, oh my God, what did I do? Right? But she was so ecstatic and happy because she had paid off that $800 a month that was eating at her budget. She was a single mom. That $800 a month to her presented the opportunity to start to change the trajectory. Now she could take 300-400 and invest it in the S&P 500 index, right? And start to make money with their money instead of paying 29% a month or annually, but on a monthly basis. So because we know different things, we can't assume others do. And we need to start from the beginning to help people. So I spend a lot of time on basic financial stuff like that with people before we get into some of the cool stuff, right? Where I was on this podcast and I was listening to this masterclass and they talked about generational wealth and do I need a trust? One of my mentees came to me one time. She's like, I think I'm ready for a trust. I'm like, well, you don't own any assets yet. What are we spending money on a trust for? You don't even know how you really want it set up yet, right? Let's just slow down a notch. Let's slow down a little and let's put a process in place, right? Now I'm proud to say she has a 740 or 50 credit score. She has under 10% utilization. She's qualified and secured $100,000 of business debt at 0% credit card so that she can use that towards her renovations of investment properties, right? Value add scenarios where then people like us, Burr Loans, can give her a loan. She can pay that back and pay off her private investor and pay her credit card back down to zero and do it again. So she's learned that process now. She's out of financial chaos. She had to have a couple of tough, really, really difficult conversations with people who've been in her life forever, but they've been in her life in a very negative manner, right? All the things you can't do, you're not really good enough for that. Do you really think that's going to fit you? Why would you waste your time trying to, all the things. Look, I grew up like that too. I mean, my kids grew up very different than me, but you get to a point where either you're going to accept that or say no to it. And she said no to it, thank God. So a year later, she's very happy. It's not perfect out there. She's a single mom. She still fights to do her thing. But, she feels like every week something new and exciting can happen in a positive way instead of the drudgery of waiting for something negative to happen all the time. Right? Because I tell people in the audience all the time, how many people have ever woken up and think, today everything's going to go right? Like 99.5% of the people are there. After they're done scrolling 2 seconds into the morning, okay, what's going to blow up today on me? Where's going to be the problem? What do I got to do to avoid it? Not even solve it, but to avoid it, right? Changing that to sort of like taking 5 or 8 minutes the night before, building a to-do list. And I don't mean make it look like Mount Rushmore of like impossible, but then taking the list, they teach us in all these different books, take the list, see what the 2 hardest things are, move them to the top of the list. I think Brian Tracy, the famous guy, he's famous for a book called Eat the Frog. So make the hardest thing the first thing you do, then everything else is easier, right? So I try to do that. I know it sounds silly, not silly, but I try to do that. Sometimes it's having to tell a customer that the deal won't work. Never a pleasant thing. But we can't do that, right? That's not pleasant, but they're depending on me. So I need to tell them that quickly so they can go change courses. Or else it's not fair to them. I'm stringing them along and I'm hurting them. We don't want to do that. That's not to say everything goes perfect. Don't get me wrong. But in those situations, being able to relay that quickly is very important.
Right. It sounds like you do a lot of traveling, a lot of speaking engagements, which is great. Can you talk to us and explain a little bit more about your business, like Burr Loans? Like, what do you guys do today? How is it structured? Who do you help out with? Just an overview of the business that you've built now.
So we're lending to investors only,
Okay.
all across the country. We can lend in 46, 47 states, but let's say elegantly And I don't know, we lend in probably 25 or 6 states pretty well, pretty frequently. We've closed in 34 in the last 12 months, but one loan in New Mexico doesn't really count to me. It's one loan.
Is it
So we're doing
first position type stuff, or is
yes,
it?
we're only lending in first position. We do a lot of fix and flip style lending. We do a lot of 30-year, commonly referred to as DSCR loans, those debt service coverage loans with no tax returns, no personal income verification needed. And if you have the audacity, the nerve to actually make the payments, we don't put the loan on your personal credit report. So that's a nice feature for a lot of investors. It's not affecting their debt to income ratios, which is helpful. We do a lot of new construction. About 2 years ago, that became a big product for us. And those are nice size loans a lot of times, small side, 500,000, good up to 3 million, I'd say, maybe slightly more. But so, you're doing a lot of 1.5 million, $2 million type of loans. And obviously for our business, that's good. And for borrowers, that provides an excellent opportunity for them to go out on a business solution and make a lot of money. So investors are finding us. Our name is sort of the vanilla of the whole industry. There's millions of followers of Burr across tons of different types of people and groups. They kind of made the acronym famous and well known on the Bigger Pockets platform. And Bigger Pockets forgot to buy Burr.com, so we did.
Wow.
That's actually what happened.
One of your best investments to date, I'm sure.
By far, I had never bought a URL for over $29, and this one cost $6,500. And I remember my son having to push my hand on the send button because I was like, "This is crazy. This is a lot of money. What are we doing?" But we've been offered over $1 million for it, so it's pretty. Wow. Yeah.
Would you offload it?
Not for $1 million, no. But
yeah,
there's a number.
Yeah.
There's a number for everything, isn't there?
Right. Yes.
2 extra zeros and a maybe.
Yeah.
There's a number though. My dream is Rocket Mortgage comes because what they would be able to do with it on their downstream would be unbelievable.
Oh,
so it seems like a natural one day, but we'll get there. We need more exposure.
That's your retirement plan. You're right off into the south of France, like you were saying, in Monte Carlo, once you sell Burr.com.
So we're doing a lot of lending to people who are just starting, to a lot of rookies. They own 1 to, let's say, 4 properties. A lot of people like in that sort of band. And then we do have some really seasoned guys, like the person I mentioned who closed 33 times. We've done, I think 38 loans is the most loans we've done for one person. And he just closed a $2.8 million deal with us in North Jersey. He's a very seasoned, very experienced investor, very smart. So some of the people, you'll see that natural progression. They'll do a couple single families, go to those 2 to 4s, 5 unit to 20 unit buildings, and then sometimes a couple of them break out to even bigger. But most of them are medium-sized investors, I would say. And look, you can build tremendous wealth, and that's really the name of the game, right? Long-term wealth. They're building some rental revenue, but building long-term wealth and taking advantage of the tax opportunities for them as well.
What do typical terms look like for you, and what are you looking for in a borrower to approve a loan?
The terms are insane. They're way too generous, honestly. On the fix and flip side, in certain states, we can give you 100% of the purchase price and 100% of the renovation.
I'll call you.
No one deserves that, but we can do it. The amount of money that's available via Wall Street conduits is so big, they're so desperate to get money out to move the needle, so to speak. Right? They need to lend and move big numbers. So they're making, at a time when you would think things would tighten up, they make it easier. So if you have 3 fix and flip experiences or 1 fix and flip and 2 rental properties, we're going to give you a minimum of 90% of the purchase price and 100% of the renovation. We can get the rates down into the low 8s. A lot of those loans go off at 8.99, interest only for a year. Depending on the size of the loan, we can go down as low as 1 point origination fee. Most of them go off at 1.5 or 2. So these are pretty reasonable numbers in the grand scheme of things.
Definitely.
This is not really the reason why you can't do a deal. It's the deal itself doesn't work, not the financing piece. So on the debt service coverage ratio side, down to a 680 credit score, I can give you up to 80% of the purchase price. On cash out refis, 75%. The rates in today's world are as good, if not better, than banks because of the leverage that we'll give you relative to a bank. We priced a loan for a gentleman this morning, one of our long-term clients. He has an 806 credit score, so really good credit. And I think at 75% on the purchase, it was a 6% fixed for 30 years. So pretty good. That's pretty good. And then, repeat offenders like him, we're charging low fees. We want to keep those types of people going all the time with us instead of having to find 1,000 new people a year. It's much easier for me to lend to the same 150, 200 people a year, 4 times each, and then find only 100 new people instead of having to find 300 new people all the time. So relationships are crucial to us. We're committed to them and you. We want to build them with new people all the time and meet them and help them. I feel like our experience, I've personally built 185 single family homes. I feel like I can help people with that experience, the good and the bad, the ugly, because, when you're building a new construction single family, that's like a whole community event. You have a lot of different humans involved, and you need to understand that and how to manage that. And I feel like our experience can help you with that. We can fight about interest rates all day. We can't always be the single lowest in America every day. So we need to bring something else to the table to help borrowers. And I feel like our experience does. We have 2 other people in the office here who've done a lot of new construction themselves, and their families have been in it for a long time. So they can help people as well, not just me, which is good. And look, everyone communicates a little different with different people. So sometimes I could be talking with Chad and it's just not going well. So I can ask Brian to talk to him and it works well for whatever reason. They connect. So we want to be able to have that available to you here inside of our own office.
So where can people get in touch with you, Joel?
The easiest place is just go to the website, B with 4 R's, so Burr.com. We don't use bots to get back to people. We use humans. And, yes, we use the text message like just about the whole world now, but we try not to attack with it. So if people reach out to us, we're not going to send them 800 emails on email drip campaigns for the rest of their life and just annoy them. We want to really connect with people. We believe we're competitive all the time. And again, we work with a lot of mentorship groups where I'll usually come on once a month and be the guy teaching about loans inside of those mentorship groups. So that's helped us a lot. It's built a lot of credibility. People like that. We're teaching people, look, we are a lender, but it's a business. And if you're in business, you can never put all your eggs in one basket, and you shouldn't. You always need 2 lenders. One you're going to love. You're going to do probably 80 to 90% of your business. But one you also need, you got to give them 10, 15, 20, because you're going to have the single greatest deal of your life when your person is out. And you need to have another relationship to get that done, because that's your shot to make $100,000 or more. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have that secondary relationship, how can you expect to pick up the phone and say, hey, I need an emergency. I got to close in 5 days or I'm going to blow the opportunity to make $125,000. But if the processes have already seen your name once and we tell them to prioritize it, they will. You send them a gift card, send them a Starbucks card or a Dunkin' Donuts card or something, right? Hey, thanks for the extra help, right? It's a 2-way street. People got to learn to think that way. It's a business. It's not a game. Mm-hmm. It's not one-off. It can be, but if you're serious about it, you got to start to think like a business. And a business always has redundancy. You don't want to have too much because that's expensive, but you want to have enough to protect your business, right? Well, having 2 lenders protects your business, not necessarily mine, but it's good for you. We want to make sure people are aware of that and thinking that way. It's important.
Mm-hmm. It's great advice. And with all your experience in the space and now growing this platform, what would you say to an investor listening that may have 1 single family rental or is looking to get into space? They might have an 800 credit score, but they want to get started in real estate today. It's super competitive, as you mentioned, compared to maybe 15 to 20 years ago. What would be some piece of advice that you would give to someone new listening to this and say, hey, everything Joel's saying is firing me up. I want to get started. What would that be?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions that we hear out there is, I can't do this because I don't have any money. I can't do this because I have shitty credit. I have bad credit. Don't wait. Mm-hmm. Don't get stuck in the mindset where you have to make 100 cents on the dollar. Mm-hmm. It's much better to partner with someone who can provide the things you lack and get 50 cents, get 33 cents to get started than to wait. Waiting is losing. You need 2 of 3 things to become a real estate investor. You don't need all 3. You need to be able to work consistently and hard and honestly. You need to learn how to source deals, find them, and you need to either have or learn where to find money. If you can do 2 of those 3 things, you can always plug in the other. And America is only number 1 in one thing anymore, and that's greed. If you have a good deal, not just spending money, but a good deal, it will always get funded. Whether you have a 450 credit score or an 800, or it's your first deal or your 50th, money wants to make money. And there's plenty of people out there that have the money. Maybe they're a professional, whatever. They don't have time to do this. They don't even know where to go look for things. But if you're willing to be able to show them that you can be someone they can rely upon to be consistent, honest, and transparent, and can do the work, managing the crews, finding the project, they can put the money up for you. And if you make $30,000 on a flip and you get 15 of it and you do it twice for the year, you just made 30 grand. And that's enough for your next deposit. Or you can sit and wait. You have an 800 credit score. You have 30,000 saved up, $1,000 a month over 3 years, right? 30 months, right? Waiting is a killer. You never get the time back. And taking that 30,000, you could have made that year and compounding it. That's how you're going to get rich, not waiting. So when I hear people tell me all the things they can't do, I like to try to help slow them down and think about how to change the way they look at it so they go do it, right? That's a big thing of what I try to do.
That's a great piece of insight. I can speak from personal experience about wanting to save, trying to find the perfect time to invest in real estate. And the perfect time is always gone and in the past, right?
Yeah.
The best time to plant a tree was yesterday. So I think, or 10 years ago, whatever the overall saying is. But to your point, like waiting is ultimately an absolute killer. Well, Joel, this has been absolutely fantastic. Again, for anybody who wants to speak to Joel, for anybody who needs some lending, for anybody who needs some advice, brrr.com. Go and speak to Joel and his team. Any final words, Joel?
Look, we appreciate the opportunity to be on with you guys. It's always fun. I love this kind of stuff. We're definitely a real estate junkie. I mean, this is what I am. And for anybody listening out there, a friend of mine is in his 70s and he was poor and broke in his 60s. Now he's flying around the world, doing great things with some charities and enjoying his life. And real estate brought that to him very late in life. So look, it's really possible. It's real. You just have to do the work. And if you do the work, you can change your life. So it doesn't take tons of money. You don't have to go to Harvard. You don't even need a GED. Just be honest with people, work hard, be transparent, and it will come together. And if you ever need help, just reach out to me. I'm happy to help you any way I can. Thank you.
I love that. What an ending. What a way to cap it. Thank you, Joel, for coming on. That was awesome. Everyone, go check out burr.com. I'm going to go check it out again after this, play around with it now that we've had a more in-depth conversation. And would love to continue the conversation and stay in touch. But Joel, thanks for hopping on. This was awesome.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.